Hi everyone, I'm Erin Thompson of Everyday Expressions, and I'm so happy to join Pear Blossom Press as a guest designer this month. This card features Pear Blossom Press Easy Lights. They're one of my favorite embellishments for a card, and there's nothing better than to give a very special someone a light up card. If you've never created one, these lights are so easy and it's just so fun to give someone this, and they just smile. They grin from ear to ear when you give them a light up card. And I think the favorite recipients are actually all the guys in my family. I have two sons and a husband, and I think it's the engineer in them that they just, when you give them a light up card, they want to figure out how it works. And so it's just one of my favorite cards to give them. Okay, so let's get started. I shared all of the supplies at the beginning of this video that I'm using. It features some Pink Fresh Studio stamps, dies, and layered stencils, and then the easy lights, and even some of the high little embellishments that look like a candle flame. So really fun things today. I began by stamping the image on 4 panels of white cardstock and then heat embossed with Wow Superfine Polished Gold embossing powder. And that way I have 1 for practice, and then I have 3 to actually ink and use on my card. I played around before you see this one. This is the final color combination that I determined. And I had one that I started with and didn't care for it as much. So I went with yellows, oranges, and reds. And I do find it's kind of one of my fallbacks. If you aren't sure what colors to use or what might look good, I always tend to gravitate to colors that are analogous on the color wheel, which means they're next to each other. So you can never go wrong with yellows, reds, and oranges, depending on what the image is. And then just colored the leaves with some yellow and then some greens. So you see I've begun with the lantern in oranges and reds. And first I believe I ink blended with Bellini and then added in some Coral Cabana and Samba, and then did some shaded areas on the Bellini with Flame. So my lantern is the oranges and reds. And then I'm going in with the layered stencil to do the foliage, and I always begin foliage with a yellow. I think if you look at leaves in nature, they almost all have some yellow in them. I think it just adds some depth to your ink blending. And then I go in with the greens, lightest to darkest. I add In the Park, Aquatini, and then Deck the Halls for the very darkest shaded areas. So I want you to know that when you have a layered stencil that doesn't seem to be overly detailed, it doesn't add in all the shading for you, it's very easy to go in with some of your inks and ink blending. And especially if you have some of these micro blenders, it makes it very easy to add some contrast and some deep dark shadows. And it really makes your images pop once once you have the big reveal and you've pulled up the stencils. So right here you see I'm adding Deck the Halls just to kind of the base of the leaves. I think this is a lovely set from Pink Fresh Studio, but yet pretty simple to use. The stamp is all one piece. It stamps everything all at one time. And then you've got just, I believe, 3 layers of stencils, and just really user-friendly. And yet, I think when we're finished, I think these lanterns are just lovely. When I got this set right away, this was a light up card was one of the first things I thought of when I saw that lantern. It's pretty easy to do, but yet really pretty. I think if you did this lantern in reds and golds, it would be really pretty for like the Chinese New Year or the Lunar New Year, for so many different holidays. among different cultures, I think, because so many cultures have lanterns and lights and festivals of lights and things. So there I just added some different yellows, and I think I started with chiffon. These are all Catherine Pooler inks, some of my favorite inks, and so I started with chiffon and then used a little limoncello and then even used glitz, which is the darkest yellow, as some of the depth and shading. Another tip I have for you is to, and I'm not always the best at this, I have to admit, but I'm getting better. When you're ink blending more than one color on the same stencil, I think it definitely helps to keep the stencil clean and to wipe it off before you switch it out for the next stencil, or even before you switch to a different color sometimes. That way you don't have any kind of cross contamination, or you don't get your fingers in it. And you'll see there when I wipe it off, I actually, when I've ink blended the orange and the red, I take my lint-free rag and I wipe up. And that way I'm not smearing any of that color down into the flowers or the foliage. And there you go. See how easy that was? It's so pretty. So then what I've done is, since I like that color combination, I created the one. I'm using my paper inking palette to hold down the cardstock, and I put the other two down. And that way I can ink up the first one and then move and use the very same colors to ink up the second one. And it went pretty quickly this time. I think if you were creating a bunch of cards at one time, this would be a great way to kind of do many at one time. So now I'm just inking the greens, and I'm not going to show you the entire inking process again because it's exactly the same as the first one, but I did just want to show you how it's easy to ink blend more than one at a time while you have all the supplies out. Just make sure you clean off your stencil in between. Ta-da! There you go. So now I've got 3. I heat set the ink real fast before I run it through the dye machine. That way you don't have any smearing, and you don't have to worry about getting inky fingers or anything. So I die cut all of the pieces, and then I'm just kind of figuring out what my layout's going to be. I had in mind from the beginning that I wanted to use 3 and do a slimline card, because the easy lights do have the 3 lights, and so from the very beginning that was my plan. So here I'm stamping the sentiment in Versamark ink, and then once again heat embossing with the superfine gold, and then I'm going to use the coordinating die cut and cut that out after I've heat set it. And there we go. And then I have die cut the black background panel, and I decided it just needed a little something. And I'll tell you, my original plan was that because more is more in my world, and I really wanted to use the new twinkle lights along with the easy lights. So I had planned on using 2 sets of lights. And so I stamped these little kind of glowing images from the stamp set, and then heat embossed them with the gold embossing powder. And my idea was that I would use twinkling lights in some of these, and maybe it would look like, give the idea of fireflies, or maybe twinkle lights in the tree branches where the lanterns are hanging. But then in the end, I have to say, I really didn't leave enough room to have the 2 mechanisms at the bottom to push, and I just liked it the way it was. So I end up not using the twinkle lights. So I'll save those for another card. But they are really cute, and I left them in here at one point. You can see I pushed both of the mechanisms so that you can see how cute the twinkle lights are. So here's what I want to show you on these lights. They're so easy, and the directions are always on the back of the packaging, but there's a positive sign right there on the little slip that you slide the button battery into. and you just find the positive of the button battery, slide it right in so it matches there with the positive, and that's it. It's so easy. And then you push the button and always smile. So now I'm just gluing down my pieces. I kind of know where they're going to go since I already figured out the design. And I did kind of maneuver them because at this point I was still thinking I would use the twinkle lights. So I wanted some of those little glowing twinkle stamped images to kind of pop in and out. But like I said, then I changed my mind and I just went with the easy lights. So I've got all the greenery. I also have a piece of gold glitter cardstock from Pink Fresh Studio that will be a layering piece on my card base behind the black Trinity stamps die cut. That background panel, the black one is using a Trinity slimline die. Very pretty scalloped edge. So now I'm just kind of figuring out the placement of my lanterns. And then you'll see that it was really easy. If you have some of this like 1/8 inch foam tape, I use this a lot for shaker cards. It worked really well for these lanterns because it's such a little narrow space between the little windows. So I use that on all of the lanterns, and then I can kind of fit my candle in the little window. So that's what I've used to pop it up with foam tape. So I add foam tape to all of the lanterns. And there you go. Get ready. Twinkle lights. Aren't they cute? And then you see also the easy lights. So fun. So there you got a little glimpse of the twinkle lights too. I'm just removing the foam tape and I will place my lanterns now that I know what I'm going to do. And then you'll see that now I've got the candles, and I actually snip off the little flame and I just adhere the candle part to the window of the lanterns, because you'll see in a moment I will take my craft pick and I'm going to poke a hole where all of the flames should be in that black background panel. You'll see, there you go. So you kind of poke it in there and then wiggle it around to definitely give yourself enough space for that pretty light to show. Super easy on this part. Just right above the candle, wiggle it around. So I need the 3 holes, and then flip it over, and you're going to use some score tape to hold each light in place. And you can see they're tiny, but there's a front to the light and then the wire is attached to the back. So I always kind of wiggle that around and make sure I have the light facing through the hole. Then there you go. I check it. I make sure it's showing just fine. And I just put that piece of score tape right over the light, holds it in place. I don't even remove the backing. I just leave it right like that. And I tape down the 3rd one. And then I'll use a piece, 1 or 2 pieces of score tape to kind of wrap the wires up. I love that they're long, and you can place a light anywhere you need on a card or even a slimline card. So then I like I said, I tape the wires in place. And before I did that, I used the push stamp from the Pear Blossom Press stamp set, and used some gold pigment ink, stamped push right down there by that little star. And it's a little stamp, and I like that it doesn't really detract from your card, but there is one of those little stamped glowing kind of orbs, so it kind of draws your eye to it and you'll see it. And there you go. See how cute those lights are? Now I'm taping down the wires on the back. And add 1 or 2 pieces that will hold your mechanism in place. And you want to put it so that the button faces the front of your card. And I flip it over so I see where the push button is, and I practice with my thumb and make sure, and then I push that into place. Now, some people probably do it the other way, and maybe they attach it to their card base and then add the top to it. But this is the way I always do it. It works for me. One trick when you're using Pear Blossom Press lights, because of the light up mechanism, you want to always double your foam tape, and then it needs to be a double layer between the front of the card and the card base, and that gives you room for your little mechanism to work. So I just added foam tape. I cut a little piece to add right to the edge on the other side of the mechanism. Add the gold glitter cardstock to the card base, and then I'll peel off the tape and add it. And then you'll see the card is just about finished. I add some flat back gold beads. I add some foam tape to my sentiment and place that. And then it's finished. And the final step is to press that button at the bottom and then smile, because these lights are just so fun. I hope you've liked this card today. Please follow Pear Blossom Press to be notified when new videos are posted. And follow me, Erin Thompson, at Everyday Expressions. Thanks so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed the video and liked this card as much as I do. Bye-bye, everyone.